Sophie Watkins. I'm here today to talk about society's endorsement of alcohol consumption and how this negatively affects our youth. So to begin, 2 years ago, my uncle was involved in a car crash. He, as well as the other driver, had both consumed alcohol that night, and that led to a head-on collision. My uncle lived, but the 19-year-old girl was not as lucky. And because of this decision, he's now facing 22 plus years in prison, and a young woman with much potential was lost. So today, alcohol is endorsed by society in a positive way. When it is presented to the public, it is most often in a way that makes it look luxurious and fun, and like the party lifestyle is one that can't negatively affect you or the lives of others around you. One may argue that you can responsibly drink, which is completely true. There's absolutely a responsible way to include alcohol in your life. The responsible drinking lifestyle is just not the one that is being encouraged by society. And it's not the way our youth are choosing to drink. So to begin, I will prove that the first part of my claim is fact. Society endorses alcohol consumption. So a show of hands in your youth, have you seen alcohol advertised? Yes, obviously, everyone has. And just think to yourself, have you seen it in a positive way? Yes. And how much, just think about how much you've seen it like positively endorsed compared to how much you've seen it negatively endorsed. So I can only think of like one commercial that I've seen that is negative, and it's usually like just centered towards teens, and completely talks about like only the negative parts. And so, just the conclusion to that is that mainly it is positively endorsed in the media. So, as a college student, I've had my fair share of exposure to media. Looking back, I see how much society encourages people to accept alcohol as a part of their lifestyle. And I think this encouragement reaches youth because media is so unregulated. So it's a negative habit shown in a positive light. So an example of this is in music. In a qualitative content analysis from the book Addiction, alcohol brand names in music were analyzed, and it was found that the average U.S. adolescent is exposed to 34 references to alcohol in popular music daily. So that's a lot. Like to hear about alcohol, you just accept it. It becomes part of your life. Of the 793 songs that were analyzed, 21.3% referred explicitly to alcohol. Of those, 24.3% contained an alcohol brand appearance. Consequences associated with alcohol were more often positive than negative, 41.5% versus 17.1%. Alcohol brand appearances were associated commonly with wealth, 63.4%, sex, 58.5%, luxurious objects, 51.2%, partying, 48.8%, other drugs, 43.9%, and vehicles, 39%. So basically, thinking of a teenager's mind, all of those things are exactly what they think. We think as like cool. It's everything that we like are basically striving for. And that study was done by Brian Primack, Eric Nuzzo, Kristen Rice, and James Sargent, and it's called Alcohol Brand References in Music, which is online, on the library. So a real example of alcohol music today would be rappers being paid to promote alcoholic drinks. Pitbull, who's a very famous rapper, mentions his alcohol brand, Royal Vodka, in his song Rain Over Me, and he even pours a glass of his vodka in his music video for Give Me Everything. And in a study done by researchers at the University of Pittsburgh, 700 songs, 2005-2007, considered popular by youth, were analyzed, and it was found that the mentioning of alcohol acts as advertised could increase substance abuse among teens. And that's from the Join Together staff at www.drugfree.org. So moving on, I'm going to prove that alcohol endorsement negatively affects youth. So here's some youth drinking statistics taken by a bunch of people. It's a youth risk behavior surveillance on More Mortal Weekly. And they found that 45% of high schools are current drinkers, which means they've consumed alcohol in the past 30 days. 26% of these youths are binge drinkers, which means they consume 4 to 5 alcohol beverages in a single sitting 1 or more times in the past 30 days. 29% have, within the past 30 days, ridden in a car driven by someone who consumed alcohol. And it is predicted that alcohol abuse and dependence will increase by 7% for each year of age below 21 that alcohol consumption begins. Alcohol is a leading cause of death and injury in youth. 70% of deaths in youth are credited to 4 major causes: motor vehicle accidents, other accidents, homicide, and suicide. And it's estimated that 40 to 50% of these deaths are related to alcohol. So, my conclusion is that society endorses alcohol consumption through the media, and this, in turn, is negatively affecting our youth. I hope you agree.
All right, well, let's start with the stuff that's pretty solid, and then we'll talk about a couple of things that are problematic. I thought that the example that you have at the beginning of the speech is effective at setting up a topic and getting us involved and interested in what you're talking about, suggesting that it is an important issue. I think you do a good job with the statistical information in the speech, although you're getting an awful lot of that statistical information from the 2 studies. And then there's just some basic factual data that is also included in there. So I thought you did a pretty solid job on that. I do think that you need a little bit more interpretation evidence to demonstrate that the frequency with which people are exposed to the brands or the music itself connects to the use or consumption. There's a correlation there, and I'm not surprised that there's a correlation, since the vast majority of people probably consume both music and alcohol. So, the fact that there is some consistency in that, I'm not sure necessarily demonstrates that it is the music that is having the impact that you're talking about. In the early section, you mentioned the lack of negative messages on that, and you don't really have any way of evaluating that except that you use your own personal knowledge of the subject. You say, well, I see lots of ads for alcohol, but I don't see hardly any ads that oppose the consumption of alcohol. Probably you're not watching the same things I'm watching, because if I see that ad about the invisible police guy standing there one more time, I'm going to scream. They're all following you around, or the guy with the alcohol in his car. He's like driving in a fish tank, and it's all loaded up with alcohol. So I mean, the truth is that there are ads that talk about the dangers of these kinds of issues. The question is whether or not they are as effective, or whether they're not prominent, whether they're prominent enough to counteract the positive images that you see are being set up. We also don't get any attitude survey about the consumers of alcohol. Do they feel that it is safe and appropriate to do these things, or are they doing these things recklessly? Because let's face it, I'm sorry to say it this way, kids are stupid, They do dangerous things, they take chances because their brains aren't really developed enough to make a lot of the decisions. So you got 14, 15, and 16-year-old kids who are listening to a bunch of music, and they're consuming and binge drinking. And is it really because they didn't get enough countermeasures, or is it because kids they've got to experiment, they got to learn, they got to do those kinds of things? You're kind of pointing the finger at the the popular culture causing this. It would be, we don't have any historical information on this context, and I think that's also a little bit problematic. Now, some things that are problematic about the speech, I don't really know that there's a lot of controversy on this. I think most people understand that consumption of alcohol can be dangerous, and that that there's a lot of endorsement of alcohol consumption. Let's face it, all advertising is an endorsement of alcohol consumption. That's what they're doing. They're selling alcohol. So I wouldn't really expect there to be too many negative things, except maybe you get the occasional thing, drink responsibly, at the end of the beer ad. But other than that, there's nothing controversial about what you're saying there. I think that that's true. There's not really much of an argument here. It's more of a description of what goes on in the world. If there's an argument to be made that says additional emphasis on anti-drinking behaviors would make a difference, that might be something that would be controversial and which you could then demonstrate as an argument. There's no preview of what the supporting structure is going to be, and there's not really much of a supporting structure. I didn't hear any signposts for those major ideas. There was one section where it sounded like it was a secondary point where he said, well, let's talk about youth drinking statistics, which is not a claim. It's just an identification of a section of material. So you need to make declarative sentences for your claims also. All right, I didn't check the time. I'm going to have to go back and do that because I didn't have my clock out while we were doing this. But I don't think it was more than 5 minutes, so it's probably like I'll put it up, I'll post it, and I'll give you a time on that then. All right, thank you.